quest for business knowledge has brought us all the way to Clarksdale, Mississippi, ground zero for the blues. And we're about to talk to Bill Luckett, owner of Ground Zero nightclub. He's not only an entrepreneur, he's a lawyer, he's a politician, and he's done a little bit of everything from painting houses to janitorial work. We're going to find out what he has to say to young people who are starting their own businesses and becoming entrepreneurs.
Well, and we're glad to have you, and we appreciate you taking time out to see us today.
Glad to do it.
And of course, you know what we're doing. We're trying to get some good business advice.
I have no idea what you're doing.
Sometimes
I
don't
go
know.
along with it as far as I can.
So I wanted to ask you a little bit about growing up in Clarksdale, but you were born in Fort Worth, right?
I was born in Texas. My mother was an only child. My father and she were in Oxford, where he was in law school. There was no hospital in Oxford, believe it or not.
Really?
1948. And being an only child, her parents insisted that she come back home to have me. And 8 weeks later or so, my father went out to Texas and brought us both back. So I've been here in Mississippi ever since.
Most of that time in Clarksdale?
Yeah, I lived in the county a little while and lived in Line, which was a suburb. But yeah, most of my life's been here in Clarksdale. I was military. I was out of state to college, and I was out of city to law school. But really, my whole life, I've claimed Clarksdale as my primary residence.
That's kind of the way I am from Drew. You know, I've never really lived in town but about 3 years, but Drew's always been my home.
Yep.
So tell us about your military service. You spent a little bit of time in the military.
Yeah, between college, between the University of Virginia, where I majored in American government and somehow graduated on the dean's list, and starting law school a year and a half after that graduation, I joined the Army, and I had some active duty basic training in AIT, Fort Jackson, South Carolina, and Redstone Arsenal, Alabama. Came back initially in the Army Reserves after that and transferred over to the National Guard. And during the process of returning home, I went to Officer Candidate School and did well there. And the Adjutant General then, B.B. Turnage, said, Lieutenant Luckett, where do you want me to place you in the state? And I was going to law school, so I said Oxford, because I was at Ole Miss at law school. And then after that, I transferred to Clarksdale, and I joined a civil engineering company, which now looking back was a very smart move. I mean, you can take engineering knowledge and apply it in a lot of different fields, especially in construction and that sort of thing, and in lawyering, which I do as well. You can't take armored cavalry and transfer that usually to civilian life. So
it doesn't
shooting mortar rounds and tanks and stuff doesn't translate to
You were in the National Guard for a little while?
About 7 years, yeah.
Now, what time frame was that?
70s.
So
70,
early 70s, after Vietnam?
Vietnam was starting to wind down, but it wasn't totally wound down, but they weren't sending any more troops.
Gotcha.
And I was in OCS from like 71, 2, 3, somewhere in that range, and I stayed on in the Guard till like 78 or 79. And I was being promoted to captain and transferred out of my cushy unit down in Charleston, Mississippi, where I served as the detachment commander. And they wanted me to join the battalion ranks and become a captain and move my residency in terms of armories to West Point, Mississippi, which translated into about a 4-hour drive or more. And I was too spoiled. I love the military. I wanted to stay in. Had I done that, I was thinking about it the other night. If I did all right with it, I'd probably be like a 2-star general right now. But I got out in 78 or 79.
You sound a lot like my dad. My dad was in the Army, and then he ended up becoming captain in the National Guard.
Yeah.
And loved it, and always loved the structure of the military. And that I've always wondered, and maybe you can answer this, you know, how do you think that structure you learned in the military has helped you in civilian life?
Well, it started in the Boy Scouts, where I was a very early age Eagle Scout, and then it moved into, my life did, into the military. The best lesson you can learn in the military is discipline, organization and discipline. Being on time, punctual. It's like I was a platoon guide in basic training. I was the first one up, the last one to bed. I had 50 men. I had details for them. I had to literally run that like running a company. It all had to run smoothly, and some great lessons there. So I carried those on into my civilian life later. I never really left the civilian world except for a several months during my
Sure.
active training. I was trained to be an ammunition specialist, and then I joined an armored cav unit in Batesville and Oxford, and then civil engineering back over here. And that background's what led my meeting Morgan Freeman, that and my work as a house painter growing up.
Well, your first job was a janitor, is that right?
I was a janitor of the office and the office building, both of which I now own, the law firm and then the building it's in. So yeah, I started pretty low there.
I started out chopping cotton, so I understand.
I've been 50 cents an hour on a tractor spraying pigweed too. So yeah, I know where you're coming from.
So you moved up from janitoring to painting houses, and you did that a while, didn't you?
Yeah, I went from janitoring to working on a farm for a couple of summers to painting houses about the 9th or 10th grade. By the time I got to law school, I had a real painting business going on. I had a lawyer who did not have a job and 4 law students working for me.
Really?
My last year of law school. I took a pay cut to start practicing law. I ran into a guy when I was running for the Democratic nomination for governor back in 2011. I ran into this guy down in the Lincoln County Courthouse named Bill Borner, and he saw me across the room. He ran up and said, Bill Luckett, man, thank you. You put me through law school. And I said, well, Bill, flip that over. You and those other guys helped put me through law school.
Right.
In fact, they weren't all guys. I had a female working for me too. So we were no glass ceiling in my business. You paint, you could get a job.
That's pretty awesome, and you use that in the future as well.
Well, painting houses, both older houses and new construction, got me introduced to construction, to the nuts and bolts, the electric, the plumbing, the framing, the finish, all that kind of work. But I was exposed to that because a lot of houses we were painting them as they were coming out of the ground, back priming, a lot of exterior woodwork and all that. And then as the sheetrock was applied or the interiors were finished, painting all of that and getting around contractors a lot and other trades. Then in the guard in the civil engineering unit, man, I'd pick their brains all day long about their different trades. We had job foremen, superintendents, plumbers, electricians, carpenters, all of that. And I literally managed to be the general contractor on the first house I built. And I've never gotten that out of my blood either. I keep building things and repairing things and saving old buildings even to this day.
And that's a big sideline business for you, isn't it? You still own a lot of rental property?
I do. My wife manages most of it. I've still got the part ownership in the 2 biggest buildings in Clarksdale, the 4-story hotel and the 7-story old professional offices building. You can see them on our.
Now, are y'all still working on the 7-story building? That's still a continuing project? Or?
We're hoping to get more into that, yeah. But, you know, being a mayor for the last 4 years, running for governor for 2 or 3 before that, and just so busy as I am, I really haven't been able to dedicate sufficient time, but I'll be going out of office here at the end of this month, this June of 17, and I plan to develop more in my acting, what I do now in terms of film acting as well as real estate. I've got interest now in putting together partnerships and deals on these 2 big buildings. Hopefully the hotel will be coming around fairly soon.
I got to ask you, I was doing some research on you, and they said you're a official super lawyer. So you got to tell us what a super lawyer is.
Well, that's I'm regarded as a super lawyer in entertainment law. In that particular specialty. Now I do have a real accreditation, and that's with Martindale Hubbell. My ranking there is an A lawyer and a V on credit, meaning the very best. But that was earned over 30 years. The super lawyer stuff is, I mean, I'm glad to be designated that.
Right.
I'll be the only one in Mississippi, and I do entertainment law work frequently, but I think it's a way to try to sell books with your name in it. You know how those
can't hurt, can it?
It can't hurt. And I wrote somebody today that I'm regarded as a super lawyer in entertainment law now.
Well, I saw that, and I've never heard that term. Even me doing some law stuff.
Google it. No, there are all kinds of subspecialty work in the law, and you know, just kind of like doctors. One's a pediatrician, one's a pulmonologist, one's an orthopedic. Well, in the legal world, you can break it down into categories.
Well,
entertainment law is one of those.
I'm a non-lawyer judge, of course. course. So
Yeah.
I do not have a law degree.
You just
And
have good common sense.
Common sense. That's what.
That's
and
all
I
it
went
really
to
takes. That's all it boils down to.
the Mississippi Judicial College helps out a lot, but I've always wondered what's the difference between a lawyer and an attorney.
I don't know that there is one.
I don't think that, I had a lawyer tell me one time attorneys get paid less than lawyers do.
I think there's a distinction in England between barristers and solicitors, but in the U.S. they're just two different names.
Well, it was a tongue-in-cheek thing, and then that was the way he put it to me.
Well, what you need to follow in anything you do is what we often refer to in chancery court, especially, which is the equity court, not the law court.
Right.
Is the do right rule. You just do right by people.
Right.
Sometimes they're close issues and both have done each other wrong, so it's who did the less wrong to the other, but other times it's just the do right rule.
Well, that's the way it is in civil court, of course, most of the time. It's just sometimes you really can't decide. Quite a few cases. It's to me, criminal court's easier because you're either beyond a reasonable doubt or they're not guilty. It's not two ways about it.
Yeah.
But a lot of times the civil court is exactly what you said. Both
He
parties
was
a lot
going
of
to mow
times
my
are wrong.
yard, and I was supposed to be paid this, but you didn't mow it all, and you didn't do it timely. And you
Car cases are terrible.
Yeah, and he ran the stop sign, but no, you were speeding.
Right.
Who caused it? That's
right. I would do all the criminal if our other judge would do all the civil, but I don't think the law
won't
will
go
do
for
that.
She
No,
won't.
she won't. Right. She won't go for that. I was really interested to read. I didn't know about you all of the construction stuff you've done, but that's a lot of hard work. And I got calluses on my hands. I know you've had some in your life, but how important is hard work? I think so many young people today see everybody being successful on Facebook or something like that, and they think they can do without the work.
Some people luck into good business arrangements and deals and success. Other people have to earn it, work at it. I guess I'm one of those who just worked at it. I had a work ethic at a very early age. I remember cashing a paycheck once from working on that tractor. I'd worked 60 hours that week at 50 cents an hour. I had $31 bills. I couldn't even close my wallet. I said, that was the first time I felt rich. $30, but I'd worked 60 hours for it. But I earned it. I did something to get it. And my first job as a painter, I started at either $1.15 or $1.25. And, I just stayed at it. And then I started working all day for a professional painter here in Clarksdale. And then I'd work at night on my own for extra money and weekends. And then pretty soon my weekends and nights grew into my own business. So by the time I was at law school, I was commuting over here. Chancellor Kyatt, then a civil procedure professor, asked me to paint his house, one of my first jobs in Oxford. So, excuse me, I painted a fraternity house over there one time that had 112 windows and doors and about 16 big columns out front. And had a crew of about 5 people, and we did it in a week. So I was real busy. I'd go into class with a white cap, white shirt, and khakis on. But you didn't
take a lot of time off back then.
I wasn't proud, I went and did what I had to do to get through law school. And as I say, I took a pay cut coming out. But frankly, I'd wake up wanting to paint a house on a Saturday morning so I could look back at it when I finished and say, I made that look really good. I get satisfaction being a lawyer, but it's usually temporal and it's on paper and clients are happy most of the time. And but you just move on to the next case, and it's just not there. Like a building that you save is there because of you. And I served 6 years on the Mississippi Heritage Trust Board, and in fact, my home was featured last year as the mid-century modern home for the state. And I just love architecture. I love saving things if they're worth saving, and most of these buildings I tackle are worth saving.
I just bought a building in downtown Drew that they were going to tear down for the brick.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't take it. I bought it, and we've been working on it off and on, myself and my farm crew. But I feel the same way, when you go to court, one case rolls into the next, and you don't think about that case anymore. You're not supposed to think about that case anymore, but there is a lot of satisfaction in taking something that was almost gone and saving it. And you saved it for another 40 or 50 years maybe, if nothing was done to it.
That's true, and I've done that a lot of times, but I've enjoyed doing it too.
Oh, yeah.
I just relish the opportunity to do it when I have time to do it.
I understand that completely. And I don't think a lot of people know that about you, that how hard you had to work to get where you are. I think people see,
Well,
people want to be LeBron today, but they forget how many times LeBron shot free throws 1,000 times a day.
that's right.
And you had your free throws too. They were just different.
My mother had a poem, a very well-known poem called "If" by Rudyard Kipling. She put it in my high school scrapbook, and I've tried to live my life by 2 verses from that poem. And I tell people this as I make a lot of speeches, but one of them, loosely remembered and quoted, is, "If you can walk with kings but not lose the common touch, then you'll be a man." And the other is, if you can gain 60 seconds worth of distance run in every unforgiving minute, then you'll be a man. So those translate to me as, don't get a big head, remember where you came from. Yeah, I can be in a tuxedo with some sirs and knights and people like that sometimes, and then the next morning be out on a painting crew and not forget where I came from, and don't get too proud. And the other is, you try to gain a lot of distance in all your waking hours. So I multitask a lot. I have a lot of things going on at once, and I enjoy it. I'm challenged by it, and it's out there usually in front of me, and I try to gobble it up as I go. So I've had a really a very good life here in the Delta. I have friends from around the world now that I see every so often back in Charlottesville, Virginia. I remember my first letter home from college. My new best friends were from Park Avenue, New York, and Malibu Beach, California. I'm still friends with those people today. And I came back here to a small town in the Delta, and they're in Zurich and Hong Kong and New York, and the Yankees lawyer. I mean, I've got some very successful, very wealthy friends. But I see them often enough, and we level with each other. I'm probably just as happy or more happy than just about any of them out there. So,
well, they probably come here and think it's wonderful too, don't they?
They do, and they applaud me for what I've been able to do here. It's more of a challenge here when you think about it.
It is.
A lot of businesses are just harder because we don't have the critical mass of people here to support things like you do in bigger cities, and you don't have some of that support staff that's easy to find. So it's a little more challenging, but you feel better when you get it done too, because you didn't have as much to work with.
So that's what made you stay in Clarksdale. I mean, you clearly had the opportunity to go anywhere you want to go in the world.
Yeah, but I grew up here and it was home, and I guess there's a little bit about feeling that kind of safety net when you're back home and you've already got a charge account at the dry cleaners,
right,
and you know where to go shopping, and you know who you can trust as friends. It's easier. It is easier. It's challenging to move into a new place, although it certainly can be done. And for a while, I did think about when I got out of college going to law school on the East Coast and all, and probably living in New York or Boston or a big city. But the opening came up in the Guard or the Reserve at the time to get into that. My parents were here, and it was just an easy transition right back into Mississippi. So I did it. Never chose to move away after that. It worked out fine.
Well, as a young man, did you kind of set goals to be where you are now, or did you see yourself heading in this direction?
I often think about this because some people in the Delta are not nearly as fortunate as I've been, and perhaps you.
Sure.
I never had a doubt that I knew I'd finish high school. I knew I'd go to college. I pretty much thought I'd go to law school. I had parents with an ability to help me along the way, not totally, but give me enough. I was a Boy Scout, and I really achieved at that level. And I often think back too about what made me try to reach and to do, and maybe overachieve a little bit. And it was a Catholic school upbringing where you were applauded for working hard and making good grades. That your parents, they have a lot to do with it. If they're complimentary of you and love you and don't run you down or ridicule you and congratulate you on success, but don't give you the big head either. And so, I think that saying about you get more, honey attracts more than vinegar kind of thing.
Right.
If you're paid compliments rather than being criticized, although I certainly got my brushes and belts on my bottom a few times, but attribute a lot of that to your parents and your teachers along the way. So I was gifted to be relatively smart in school, and won awards, and so I just sought more of that. I like that. So I just overachieve, I guess, is the best way to describe me. Background, what opportunities, where did they really come from? So I do a lot of thinking like that, and I realize that a lot of people are victims in a way of their own circumstance, and it's hard to crawl out of it. It's tough. And I'm more compassionate, I think, to people for that very reason. You probably have that as a judge a lot.
Absolutely. I was thinking
some
that very
hard
thing.
love stories, and I'm sorry I had to feed my family if I stole something, and those tear at you a bit, and they do me too. So you try to balance the compassion with the realities of the world and the expectations of other people.
Was there ever a time when you were younger that you had any doubt in what you were doing, that you thought maybe I've gone down the wrong road, or maybe you had a tough financial time or something like that?
I was low crawling under barbed wire and machine gun fire once, and basic Army training, thinking I'm gonna freeze to death right out here right now. I thought I was getting frostbite and all that, and there've been a few times you just kind of want to throw it in, but you persevere and you get through it.
So what got you through those kind of, what goes through your mind when you're going through something
I'm
like that?
not a quitter, and I'm going to finish this. And they tell you when you go into the service, you ain't the only ones going through this. 50-something million people have already done it before you, and that's probably not the accurate number, but you realize, others have done it. My dad was in the Navy. I had relatives in all the great wars, and so they did it. I can do it too. You kind of rationalize it a little bit in your own mind, and then you think, oh, no, I'm not a quitter, and nobody achieved anything by quitting. So that's what probably got me through it. And maybe I was pretty close to the end of the crawl by then.
That helps too.
That helps.
That there's an end. I always think about this. Obviously, work ethic's so important, but you also got to be able to dream a little bit too. And I think about how can you both have your head in the clouds and dream a little, but also have that work ethic. So many people are stuck in one place or the other. Either they got this great work ethic and they're going to dig ditches the rest of their life, or they're a total dreamer and they don't have any work ethic.
It takes
you got both of that.
Well, I tell you, I tell this story of my wife a lot. Back when I was really in the heyday of doing this construction work around here and fixing up these rental properties, and started getting more venturesome in a sense of, instead of just doing little 2-bedroom, 1-bath houses, I was now looking at doing 8 apartment units in one building. And we were up in Memphis for a basketball tournament one year, and down on Front Street or somewhere where those old brick buildings were before anybody got down there and really started redoing them. And somebody had set up like a spaghetti soup kitchen in one to feed the fans walking to the pyramid. And I remember I walked in one and I was looking around thinking, man, I tell you what I could do with this building. And my wife turned to me and said, don't even think about it. Now, if I'd followed my gut and not listened to her, no telling where I'd be really, but I would have owned a lot of Memphis right now. But I've had those where I wish I had just followed my instinct instead of listening to others. I'm not blaming her for not doing that in Memphis. It might not have worked out at all, but still.
Instinct is huge.
I was certainly dreaming of how to break that building up into apartments and some maybe retail downstairs, and it lent itself to it. And I know how to do it, but I didn't do it.
Do you have a problem? And I'll catch this with me, so I'm going to ask you if you do this. I cannot go on vacation without looking at a building and thinking what I could do with that. And when you told that story,
I have that everywhere.
My brain works that way all the time. Yeah. I'm thinking, man, that would be a great this, or it would be a great.
My daughter went to school at a private school called Rollins College in Winter Park, Florida, and they have a street there called Park Avenue, and it's pretty ritzy for a southern town, even though it's in an upscale Winter Park community. And I found myself walking while we would be down there for some school event or even her graduation. She got her MBA there too, so we went to 2 graduations. And there was a part of town there that was sort of run down just about a block away. And I started having those thoughts about coming back down here and getting options on a whole bunch of houses at once, and then kind of flipping it all at one time and taking a whole block and upscaling it and modernizing central heat and air, attic stairways. That's what I did most of the houses when I buy them. And anyway, I didn't follow through with that one either. But I have thoughts like that I wish I'd acted on now, and I didn't. But then again, that probably opened the door for something else up here to do. And so I'm not regretting it really, but I do kind of wonder sometimes what might have, could have, should have been.
You'll probably this story will sound familiar to you, but I bought my first rental house for $5,000, probably not too many years ago. and had no central heating area in it, and we completely ripped the sheetrock down to the studs ourselves, and put new sheetrock in it, new wiring. The roof just happened to be good. Put central heating area in it, and then as soon as we were done, it appraised for like $37,000. Of course, it's not going to sell for that, but it is a sense of accomplishment when you realize a lot of that sweat equity. It's not all.
Yeah, I teach a course at Ole Miss Law School now in what's called winter session, and it's called Lawyers as Entrepreneurs.
Really? Tell us about that.
And
That's great.
I teach the course with two goals in mind. One is to convert these, and it's only open to upper class, and there's a waiting list out here to get in it. I really put a lot of effort in it, I'll put it that way. I've done it now for about 6 years. I teach these law students how, when they become lawyers, to also become entrepreneurs. And then I teach these law students to be lawyers how to advise others who would be clients of theirs how to go about becoming a successful entrepreneur. And of course, no risk, no gain kind of thing. And entrepreneurship is all about risk and failure and hopefully some successes. But I try to orient them toward rather conservative investments too, like real estate. If you get in it early, I wish I'd started it earlier than I did. I got into it when I was about 40, so around roughly 30 years ago, I started. It wasn't my first property to buy. I had a few scattered here and there that I was used to, like living in a house or an office building. But in earnest, picking up rental property, I'd look for the fringes of a good neighborhood, pick up the ratty-looking house and make it nice. And that was kind of the model I had working along. But I urge them now to look at doing that early. Instead of buying your first single-family residence, buy a duplex. Rent out the other half. And then when you can, and you move into your own first single-family nice home, rent out the other half. And then you got a borrowing base kind of underneath you all the time. You're building equity, and really somebody else is building your equity if you're smart about getting your rent right and collecting rent. So I teach them things like that, and I try to teach people things that I feel I wish I had done earlier than I did, or younger than I did, I'll put it that way. When did you start?
Well, I'm 43, and I've owned this house fixing to be 44. I've owned it about 4 years. So
well, you started right when I did.
Yeah, well, when you said 40,
well, that's all right.
And it was one of those things. Now, I bought my first commercial building in Drew. I was probably 30.
Yeah.
But then I put a business in it. But it was and I know you feel this way too. When you buy something like that on that fringe of a good neighborhood or whatever, and you repair it, you not only did a good thing for yourself, you did a great thing for the community too.
Yeah, and I, for a while there, I was buying a house here in Clarksdale every 2 weeks. I did that for several months anyway, probably longer than several. I think I'm not even sure, I don't want to sound crass or coy, but I'm not sure how many houses I own right now. I'm really not. My wife could tell you probably, and I could think down each street and get the address. It's pretty
So that's about as lucrative, if not more, in your law practice probably, isn't it?
Well, I use it as a borrowing base often, so I collected a whole lot of houses, a lot of equity, and I use it to borrow money when I ran for governor, and I have some net worth out of it too, yeah. But then I started getting into bigger buildings. Of course, there's more risk in some of them, but then again, I saved a building that had been empty for 50 years, and it's probably the nicest apartment building in the county. It's in Line. It's called the Bank of Line. The Hotel Clarksdale, I give them their old building names when I redo them typically, was empty for about 35 years when I got it. The Delta Cotton Company Apartments, where Ground Zero Blues Club is located underneath, that one had been empty 30 years when I bought it. So yeah, I've saved a lot of old buildings and given them a lot more future life and converted them into properties that actually would make money if you manage them right. So I'm trying to do that too.
And make Clarksdale a much better place.
And it does that too, sure. It builds a tax base, it's an attraction for somebody to come and use. And these buildings they stay pretty full. So that's a good thing when you keep your occupancy up.
My first building I bought, the tax on it was $35 a year because it was in such bad shape. They had condemned it, and now the taxes are about $500. So,
I had a few at $500 still, but
they're smaller buildings. They're $500 each. They're one story. But talking about Ground Zero, we obviously need to talk about that a little bit. Tell us about that investment and what that's meant to you in your partnership with Morgan Freeman.
Morgan and I got to be friends in the mid-90s because he was looking for a lawyer who knew about construction and engineering.
And clearly you fit
there,
right in
and
there.
there I was. I mean, I didn't do any of that to think I'd meet an A-list movie star down the road. I did it for the reasons we've already talked about. But that's how I met Morgan. Somebody referred him to me and said, look, you need a guy who knows about how to build things, how to read plans, how to know the relationship between owners, architects, engineers, contractors, and who's a lawyer. So I kind of fit right into that, and we hit it off real well. And after a few years, Morgan was coming over here often, and he would see all these tourists wandering around Clarksdale. And, what are they doing here? What are they doing here? I said, they're here because this is the epicenter. This is ground zero for blues music, and it's America's gift to the world. He said, well, they seem to be walking around a lot or something. And I said, yeah, they keep asking a question at the Delta Blues Museum of where can we hear live blues music? There was not a good answer. The answer was typically, we don't know. You might try here or try there or read the paper or look for a billboard or something, but there was no good answer. So we set out to answer that question. We're going to give a place, a venue for live blues music at least 2 nights a week. So we started out Fridays and Saturday nights, and under Mississippi law, to get a liquor license, if you're not resort status, you have to have a full kitchen, and a percentage of your sales need to be food. So we supplied that ingredient as well, and we opened that club up on May 11, 2001. So
you just celebrated 16 years.
16 years in last month. Now, we have yet to be in the black. In other words, we don't take any money out of it at all. In fact, Morgan and I have had to put money in it to keep it going all these years. And it's been pretty costly in that respect. It's kind of like football. Wait till next year. Wait till next year. Well, this year is looking pretty promising to break even for the first time in our 17th year.
That's amazing.
But it may get there. But the satisfaction we got, although we lost in a financial sense and have continued to all these years, look at what it's doing for this area.
Oh, no doubt.
I mean, the tour bus is coming in. We've had 2 big groups from Australia and the Netherlands, 3 buses this week already. And the musicians who play here, just the notoriety it's brought us. I think the highest couple of compliments I've heard, I was doing a television interview for a film crew from the country of Estonia. I knew it was somewhere in Eastern Europe. I wasn't quite sure. My wife really didn't know where it was, but we figured it out by looking at a global map. And anyway, she went up to the producer and said, how do y'all know about Clarksdale and Ground Zero Blues Club? And the guy said, everybody in the world knows about this club. And that was a high compliment. Yesterday, a tour bus from Australia was here. These people flew from Australia, ultimately landed in New Orleans, got on a tour bus, and they worked their way up Highway 61. They were here having lunch, and they brought a musician. I think his name is Jules, but I'm not sure how you spell it. And we were talking yesterday, and I said, we're getting a lot of Australians here, and we get a lot of Brits too. And I said, how do y'all know about it? He said, everybody in the world knows about this club. So there it was again from another part of the world. So we're real proud of what we've been able to accomplish with that. Now, we didn't start the blues music here, no doubt about it, but we certainly are getting a lot of good press that brings people into this area.
I think it's fair to say that you and Morgan are the only 2 that could have pulled that off. Who else could have done it?
Well, we had our naysayers at the time, and we didn't listen to them. We just plugged right ahead. Now,
is that part of success, not listening to them?
You sometimes have to ignore some of the critics and know what in your gut, in your heart, and your intuition tells you is right. Talking about Ground Zero a little further, we are now ranked the #1 blues club in the nation by bestbluesclubs.org, and if I looked on average, if you looked at 100 people who come there, besides our staff who work there, you'd find less than 10 from here or the area. You'd find about 40 from the United States, and you'd find 50 from around the world. That's kind of the breakdown.
So half of your clientele are
international tourists. And
coming right here to Clarksdale.
We're the leading city in Mississippi for international tourism, believe it or not.
I did not know that. That's incredible.
And about the leading 2 groups from international are Australia and Great Britain. It's daily you meet people in there from Australia and Britain.
In the Delta, as long as
show off your assets, so to speak, and then you pitch the ball. So we bring them to Clarksdale. We want to send them to Cleveland to the Grammy Museum. We want them to go to the B.B. King Museum. We want them to go trail these blues trail markers all
Do you
through.
think that the
We want them to
Delta
go to
works well
Rosedale,
together
where
on that
Eric
kind of
Clapton. Eric Clapton thought the crossroads was in Rosedale.
Right.
Did he ever get it wrong?
Yeah.
It's here, like Johnny Lang said, driving in the darkness down Highway 61.
Not one.
Going to the crossroads like the ones before me done. Yeah, it's not on Highway 1, it's not on Highway 49, it's on Highway 61. But as a whole, we're big enough. We've got the Highway 61 Museum in Leland, we got B.B. King in Indianola, Grammy now in Cleveland, Delta Blues Museum here. Some of these tour groups are stopping in Greenville on Walnut Street at that joint. So we've got enough collectively to make this a real destination and get people to spend several nights touring it all. And when Drew gets Archie Manning stuff going strong, and Friars Point gets Conway Twitty, that'll be a couple of more that will attract people. And if we can hold them in here 2 or 3 nights, that's great. It's like, I call it the casino cluster mentality. You build one casino, you may get 10 people to come. You build 2, 30 come. That's 15 each, not 10. So
do you think all business works that way? To some degree?
I think retail and entertainment does.
Especially in rural areas, maybe?
Why do you have a Wendy's set up across from a McDonald's? Why is CVS next to Walgreens? These people aren't dummies. They've got this figured out. Why do you have a whole row in Nashville of joint, one after another, all together? You'd think go set it way over here by itself. It doesn't work that way. People want to be able to go into one and go to another.
I think they want options.
They do, and they want options the same day or the same night even. They don't eat at one and dance at the other or drink at all of them. You know, it's a good thing to have options. It is.
The best my restaurant in Drew has ever done is always 2 weeks after another new restaurant opens.
Yeah.
Every time.
Yeah.
My sales always go up. Everybody always asks me, am I worried about competition? And I say, I don't even think about what the competition is doing. I just do my thing.
I like options if I'm a tourist myself, and I know here in Clarksdale now we have about 4 operating joints. You can get live music 7 nights a week. Do we try to offer it 7 nights a week? No. We're 4 nights a week, and others are 1 or 2 or 3, or some may even be 4. It's good to have a lot of choices when you come to it.
So 16 years ago, there were no live music options, really?
No.
And today there's how many?
There are at least 4, and on our Juke Joint Festival,
Well, yeah.
I end up with about 12.
But now there's 4, but your sales continue to increase.
Our sales for the week of the Juke Joint Festival, which started, I think, 11, 12, 13, however many years ago. I know when it started in 07 or 08. Our sales have climbed every year, despite now 4 night, or even 12 that night.
Yeah.
They've climbed every year. And even
which kind of goes directly to what you're saying, is that competition's a good thing.
It is, because people can have lots of choices.
For the people and the businesses.
And if they spend a night, they may want to go to one place one night and another the next.
Sure.
That's fine. I encourage it. When the restaurant opens down the street from you, you need to welcome it, not criticize it.
So do you have any just general business advice? I think you may have alluded to some stuff earlier, but if you were a young man and you were starting, kind of the way you think of your class.
Yeah, I think the best advice I can give is follow your gut, and don't be afraid of failure. You look at all the successful entrepreneurs who have failed initially, and a second time, and maybe a third, and they keep trying. Yeah, you could just kind of tuck in and everything you do be extremely conservative in your approach, and you may make it just fine, but open it up a little bit more and take some chances and try some things. So that would be my advice, is to don't be afraid of failure.
You know, I think all failures can be learning experiences, and it's never really a failure if you don't
Sam
give
Walton
up.
called them opportunities.
I agree.
Mistakes are opportunities to learn from the mistake and do a better job next time.
Really expensive education. That's what that.
Some of them can be, that's true, but you just can't let yourself get down. And sometimes you get down and you keep thinking, didn't I just say you can't let yourself get down?
Right.
And that helps pick you up a little bit sometimes.
Well, Mayor, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, enjoyed it.
And I did. I really enjoyed it, and I think I learned a lot, and I hope the people that get to see this learned a lot as well.
Well, I do too. I don't know how much I have to teach, but I can tell you what I know.
I thought it turned out well.